This is a walkthrough of the second practice access exam. Here's bookstore.xlsx, which is going to have one of the tables we're going to need to import. And here's practice access 2. I'm going to open the file, and I'm going to enable the content. And right now I have the book table, and I'm going to need to create 2 other tables. Before we proceed, I just want to point out within this book table, if you look at it in design view, there's this author code, which is of type long integer. It's going to be a foreign key. So it's a number with the field size of long integer. It's going to match to an author ID code, which is going to also have to be a number with long integer, which that's going to be the primary key. So we have the book table, and now we're going to create the other 2 tables. So we go to the instructions here, and the instructions are to create a table called publisher having the following structure. So we go to create in table design, and the structure will be pub ID, pub name, and URL. These aren't all going to be text. Pub ID is in fact going to be text, and it's going to be the primary key. Pub name is going to be text, but URL is going to be hyperlink. Furthermore, we want to specify for pub ID the caption, which is how it's going to appear in some result set or on a form. It should say something like publisher's ID, and pub name is going to say as the caption publisher's name. So you should expect to be able to go into field properties and change something there. Okay, that's everything for creating the design of the table. We could also enter the following data for the publisher's table. Now it's going to turn out that the only real fields that we need is this pub ID. The rest of it, yeah, we're gonna. If you run it, you want to get the right answers. But I'm going to save myself some time instead of having to type these in one by one. I'm just going to put in the pub IDs, maybe the pub names also, but I will skip the URLs because it doesn't really matter. So we'll go in here, we'll change the view to design view. We want to call this is called the publisher table, so publisher. And so publisher's ID is going to be MH. Next one is PH. Then WI, EL, AW, MP, and CL. And each of these, the publisher's name, you see this is a caption property we saw beforehand, that actually might appear as part of the results of queries, because after all, well, we'll see with many of the queries we're gonna bring in that piece of information. Prentice Hall, Wiley, and so on and so forth. We just put in all of these. Put an extra space here. Okay. And it doesn't really pay to put in these URLs because it's not like we're going to go there anyway, and it's not going to be showing up. But you see, you could type in a URL like http:// oops, it took us to the wrong place. mhhe.com, www.mhhe.com, and there we would have the URL, and we could do it for the rest of them as well. Okay, so now that is the book table. To get the next table, we're going to get it from external data. We'll import it from c:/practice access, which is where we got these other files. So we can browse in here, and here's the bookstore.xlsx. If we would open it, we would see this different tabs, the different worksheets. So we'll start importing, and we have to choose. We already have book, we have publisher, we need author. Now, the first row does contain the column headings. Author ID, instead of saying double, which is a number like 3.4 or something with a decimal point, I'm going to say instead it's a long integer. That's what we saw beforehand. Within the book table, there was an author code which was a long integer. That was a foreign key. We're looking now at the primary key that's going to match up to it. Yes, no duplicates for the author ID because it's going to be a primary key. We go to next, and where it gives us the option to choose my own primary key, I'm going to choose author ID. We'll call it author. That's a good name for it, and we finish. And then we have our 3 tables. The next step is to establish a relationship between these 3 tables. So you could double click for each of these, or you can just drag them in 1, 2, 3, just like that. And the fields are the foreign keys and primary keys that are supposed to be linked, we'll just link them. So pub ID to pub ID, and enforce referential integrity, and author ID to author code, and we'll enforce referential integrity. And that way we have these links, and I can then close this, and it's going to ask me if I want to save, and I'll say yes. And now let's go back to the instructions. That was part A and B, and also part 2. Right, we exported, and part 3. Part 4, we're going to use the report wizard to create a report. It's going to be a little bit different because it's going to be, we'll use the same report wizard, but it's going to involve multiple tables. So we go over here to create report wizard, and we'll choose the first table. The first table is going to be the book table. So from the book table, we want the title and price fields. Title and price. The next table we want is the author table for the last name. So here's author, we choose last name. And then from the publisher table, we want the pub name. We go to next. How do you want to view it? We want to view the data by publisher. This is really sort of like a grouping level by publisher. Go next, and then you want to add another grouping level. I would call it another grouping level, but we'll add a grouping level using last name. So here's last name. Go to next. You want to sort by title in ascending order. So title, and by default it's in ascending order. There's nothing over here for summary options. We'll skip this button over here. Instead we go to next. We want stepped in portrait is what was specified. Concourse style, and the name is going to be book list. So concourse style, and instead of being called publisher, it's going to be called book list. So we'll just we could preview the report. Why not? And we can change. This is in print preview mode. Okay, let's close the print preview. Right now we're in design mode. We want to be design view. We want to be in layout view. We'll just eyeball this, and we see over here that there's not enough space for all of these fields here. So you might want to give a little bit more space for these. And similarly over here for the price, you might want to give a little bit more space for price so that it'll show up. And so that's what the instruction says. Switch to layout view and adjust each column's width as necessary. Okay. Then we have 6 queries to create. Let's just close this and save it, and so on and so forth. And now we're going to create, in each case, again, we're going to use the query wizard, simple query wizard. These queries are a little bit difficult, more difficult than the ones in practice exam 1, in that they're going to all involve multiple tables. And they're also, some of them are going to require calculated fields. But let's look at this first one. It's Apprentice Hall, similar to the query 1, except now they're based on linked tables. So what tables do we need? What fields do we need? So title from the book table title. From the author, the last name. And from the publisher table, pub name. And we'll modify the query design that we want the pub name to be Prentice Hall. And there's not going to be any different kinds of spellings like there were in the other one, because there's only going to be one row in the publisher table that says Prentice Hall there. And now we can save this query. Anything else in ascending order according to title. So here's title, sort in ascending order. And this is supposed to be called Prentice Hall Books. I think that's what I called it, but we'll see in a second. I just called it book query. So we'll have to rename it in a second. Let's just make sure we only get Prentice Hall Books. Yes. So we'll close this, save it. This is book query, the name of it. was supposed to be Prentice Hall books. So that's the first query. The second one, title and pub date of the book table. So create query wizard, simple query wizard from the book table. It's going to be title and pubble date. It's actually spelled a little bit differently. Pubble date of the book table. Last name from author, and from the publisher table is going to be pub name. The title for this query is going to be books not yet published, and this is already a calculated query. And we'll modify the query design. And for this one, I'm gonna use a trick. I'm gonna add a calculated field. That calculated field is going to be the result of calling the date function, which is going to give me a serial number representing today's date, the offset from January 0, 1900. And then we can perform a subtraction between that and the pub date field, because that pub date field will be the date where a book has been published. Now, all of this is not so good. It's not a good situation because this is an old test. So if we look here in the book table, none of these have not yet been published. But I'll put over here, this is going to be 2012, this is going to be 2011, and so on and so forth, so that way it'll still be somewhere in the future for when I'm making this test, this example at least, because today is still 2010, December 2010. So I changed this table here, so I'll get some kind of results. If I call date, so it's going to be expression 1 is date. If I ran this, you see over here it's giving me the date, which is 12/8/2010. You probably would like to do it instead using this expression builder like you did in the hands-on exercises, but whatever. So we have the date here, and I can subtract the pubble date. I could pubble date minus today's date, and then if any pubble date is in the future, so then this number is going to be positive. So we can run this. You see these two numbers are positive, everything else is negative. So we want to have as a condition the criteria is greater than 0. So that way the pubble date is in the future. And you see these are the two numbers that are in the future. We don't need to show it, so we can clear this checkbox to show it. And then in terms of the instructions, we want to sort them in descending order according to the pubble date. So pubble date, sort in descending order. And I run this, and here is the specific results, but that's because I messed around with the table a little bit. Okay, so that's how you might use calculated fields in order to accomplish some kind of query. Query 3, list all the books where the published date is less than 60 days old. Now, what it means less than 60 days old is it shouldn't be 70 days old, and it also shouldn't be in the future. So I'm going to use the same trick we did in the past, that is between some number and the other. But what I'm going to calculate is it's going to be a calculated field, which I just won't show. So let's start. We'll choose the tables, and we'll choose the fields, and so on and so forth. So we go over here to create within the query wizard a simple query wizard from the book table. I want title, pubble date, and copyright. Title, pubble date, and copyright. But that's not the only table. I also want the last name from the author and pub name from publisher. So author, last name, and publisher, pub name. Detail query. The title of this will be new books. We'll modify the query. And in addition to all of this, I'm going to say, again, in the last number of days. So we could say here, date, open close parentheses, minus pubble date. And if we ran this query, you see we have different numbers. If we had the pubble date being, remember this was 12/8 right now, 2010, so I'm going to make this into 12/4/2010. So then all of a sudden, this expression 1 says 4. It was published with 4 days ago. So then I'll close this query, or I could actually just go back to view. And this should be, it's within the last less than 60 days ago. He said less than 60 days old. So we could say between 59, between 0 and 59. And like that, you see we just get this particular result. And also, if the copyright year is 2010, we also want to show it. So or means on a separate line. Copyright is 2010. And now we run it, and you see we have all of these. We still don't want expression 1 showing, so we're going to clear this little checkbox, and that will give us the results that we want. Okay, so that was new books. Query 4. List all the books that are published by Wiley and whose title contains. So contains is going to be a wildcard match where there's going to be a star before and a star afterwards. So let's start with the with the tables and the fields. So we go to create, we go to query wizard, and we start with the books table. The book table is going to be the title of the book table. So here's book title, the last name of the author, and the pub name of the publisher. The title for this query is going to be Wiley Excel 2007 books. We'll modify the query design, and we want that the pub name should be Wiley. And this is going to be an AND query because it has to both be from Wiley and something else is true. What's that something else? That it should have Excel 2007 as part of the title. So that's going to be star Excel 2007 star. Because it could have anything beforehand, anything afterwards, but in the middle somewhere, and that in the middle could also mean the beginning and the end, because stars match also nothings. So it's going to add for me like and quotation marks and so on and so forth, and I could run this, and here are the Wiley Excel 2007 books. Now I did something wrong, obviously, because let's look at books, and if you scroll down, here's Wiley. And there are some books with Excel 2007 in it from Wiley. So I must have done something wrong. Within the books, this is the book table. Within the publisher table, WI is Wiley, so that's correct. I did something wrong. Like Excel 2007, and this over here says Wiley is the publisher. Let's try taking out each of these in turn and seeing if so this Excel 2007, see, this doesn't have, oh, you know what happened, I put it in the wrong field. I put it under last name. It's supposed to go under the title, and the publisher name is supposed to be Wiley. There we go. And we run this. That's why it's always a good idea to run your queries, just to make sure you didn't make some kind of stupid error. Okay, so here we have Wiley Excel 2007 books. Query 5. List all the books whose edition field is empty. We would call that null, using title and edition field of the book table, etc., etc. So we go to create, we go to query wizard, simple query wizard, and what do we want? Title and edition from the book table. So from book table, title and edition. Last name of author and pub name of publisher. Author, last name, publisher, pub name. Go to next. It's going to be a detail query, and the title of this is going to be First Edition Books. And what's going to be true is that first edition books aren't going to say an edition number, because it doesn't make sense to say edition for a first edition book. So you see over here for book, see some of these, it has 2 is the edition, 4 is the edition, 6 is the edition, but things that are first edition just don't have an edition number here. So that's going to be null, a special value, which means it's empty. So how do I test if something's empty? I could say the following thing. I could say is null. and then if I run it, these are the ones where the addition is null. And we want to sort this in ascending order according to the pub name field. In ascending order according to pub name. And let's say I would want not first edition books, so then I could say is not null. And then I would get these other results. Of course, that would be a different query. It wouldn't be first edition books, it would be query 6, which would be revised books. That's what you should do if you wanted to do it on the test. But here I just wanted to demonstrate it. I showed other ways of doing it in class, but this is sufficient for a review of this. Let's just see that I'm not missing anything. I am not. Okay, so I save this query and I close it, and that's the end of the second test, practice test. Good luck on the actual test, and let me close this now.